Hello, I'm Brian Wilford, Member of Parliament for Richmond Hill, and this is MP Report. Behind me is a statue of Prime Minister Louis Saint Laurent, who was Prime Minister from 1948 until 1956. Louis Saint Laurent was a Liberal Prime Minister and was involved in probably the greatest post-war effort in Canadian history in terms of the development of Canada, particularly in the mineral resource area, the expansion of Canadian cities, the development of many social programs in Canada. And it's fitting that I am here today. I want to talk to you about a couple of key issues. One of them that has been certainly in the media, and that has been about members of Parliament's expenses. The average member of Parliament has a budget to maintain their offices, to hire their staff, to do the printing, to do everything that a member does, roughly around $300,000. Out of that $300,000, about 70% is for staff salaries. For example, in Richmond Hill, my constituency office, which I have to pay the rent for, is about $20,000 a year, which I pay to the town of Richmond Hill. And we have an auditing process. But before we go into the auditing process, I want to explain that I have a financial officer who we submit receipts to. And there is a do and a don't list. As an example, when I was on Richmond Hill Council, I could, as a member of council, use expenditure for the Richmond Hill Chamber of Commerce and have those dues paid by the town of Richmond Hill. As a member of Parliament, I cannot do that. I write my own check because it is not on the due list. In other words, the rules are extremely strict. The financial officer who looks at that, then it's reviewed by another officer and then by a supervisor. And ultimately, the accounting firm of KPMG does the audit to make sure that those expenses are what we have indicated are. So if you go to my website, brianwilford.ca, you will see an icon that says Members' Expenses. It explains the process, and it also has in the various categories, whether it's my rent, whether it's staffing, whether it's printing, etc., the total amounts of each of those categories are present. This is not like Great Britain. It's not like Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and Labrador. I have never seen such tight controls. I have no problem with accountability or transparency, which is why that is on my website. But I think that some people suggest that we want to compare and contrast. It's very difficult when you're dealing with 308 members of Parliament across the country, in which their costs are going to be different depending on where they're from, in terms of their rent, in terms of who they hire for their staff, etc. But make no mistake about it, having the transparency on that website, having those categories for you, I think is important, so that you know, not only mine, but the site that is on there actually lists all 308 members of Parliament. Today, I witnessed an address by the President of the United States of Mexico, the President of Mexico, Felipe Calderon. And Calderon came to Canada in part to talk about a number of key bilateral issues. Those issues are trade. Those issues obviously deal with the visas that were imposed on Mexico by the government of Canada. They dealing with issues of strategic nature in the hemisphere, and obviously trying to enhance the relationship. Over 200,000 Mexicans visit Canada every year, and 5 times that go to Mexico, particularly in the winter months. So this is very important to visit, and the Mexican president addressed Parliament today, and that was an opportunity for us to hear the issues that he has of concern, and obviously concern to us are issues such as the drug trade in Mexico, not only within Mexico, but the exporting of drugs through the United States and into Canada. And so there will be obviously officials meeting on that. The Prime Minister will be meeting, of course, with Mr. Calderon, etc. Another issue that I'd like to talk about is the current situation in Afghanistan, and to indicate to you that there will be a major operation continuing now through to September, and that operation particularly now in the Kandahar region. Before it was in in the Herat region, in the western region of Afghanistan. Now it's going to be in the Kandahar region, where close to 3,000 Canadian personnel are stationed. The idea is to bring the full weight of the NATO operation there to bear on the Taliban. At the same time, Canada is very much involved in development issues and obviously the training of the Afghan National Army. and obviously the Afghan National Police. Building capacity at the village level is extremely important in order to ensure that we build the kind of Afghanistan which Afghans can be proud of. And obviously Afghan ownership is absolutely critical. And so Canadian forces continue to do an outstanding job there. We have to note, regrettably, in the month of May, we have lost 4 personnel, including Private McKay, who was from Richmond Hill. And again, our thoughts and our prayers go out to all of the families. We hope, God willing, that there will be no future casualties in the future. But of course, the IEDs, the booby traps that are out there make it very difficult, often for detection, and unfortunately it does result in either casualties or unfortunately in death. I want to point out that the National Defense Committee, of which I'm the Vice Chairman of, is dealing with post-2011. What will we do with the forces when they come home? Should we be more engaged in peacekeeping operations, peace training operations, combat roles? And so we are dealing with many witnesses in order to put forward a detailed report to the government to look at various options for the future. I had the opportunity yesterday to meet with Mr. Devlin. Peter Devlin will be the new commander of Canadian Land Forces, of the Army, and certainly looking at what he is proposing and what he wants to do for the future, because of course the armed forces have been doing an outstanding job overseas. They are highly trained, highly professional, but there needs to be downtime given the amount of time. It's been the longest serving mission abroad for Canadian forces. And finally, I would like to say to you that as Parliament begins to wind down over the next month, continuing to respond to many issues, including the issue of illegal tobacco, which I'm going to be working with an organization, small business owners in the community, to deal with what they have as a 10-point program. The issue of illegal tobacco, taxes, etc. is not purely a federal issue, and I am going to be proposing that we meet with the Mayor of Richmond Hill, with the member of the provincial legislature for the riding of Richmond Hill, and with concerned shop owners to look at the issue of smuggling, to make sure that we have a strong enforcement presence in dealing with illegal contraband. It's extremely important for many of our shop owners. Many of them are new Canadians, and they're trying to provide a good living for their family. And obviously, when we have organized crime and others involved in this, it's a very difficult situation. When I was president of the Canadian Parks and Recreation Association in the 90s, I did a program to deal with 7-year-olds to 11-year-olds with Health Canada. We partnered, and that program was to convince children of that age not to smoke, not to begin to smoke. And also, as the president of the Federation of Municipalities, I was involved very much in border smuggling issues, particularly the areas of Cornwall, Ontario, Windsor, Ontario as an example. So we will continue both in the riding and in Ottawa to respond to your concerns and your needs. I appreciate you viewing, and we'll be talking to you soon. Thank you very much.